The moment your people stop speaking up is the moment your team starts failing. The danger is silence always looks like agreement until it's too late. Stick around because today we're breaking down how great leaders create trust when the pressure's at its highest. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Everyday Diplomat. I'm Michael Forras, a retired Marine Sergeant Major, former U.S. diplomat, and somebody who spent the better part of 2 decades leading high-performing teams through crisis, conflict, and constant change. Across every one of those environments, from combat zones to embassy halls, one truth has always stayed the same. The teams that perform the best are the ones that feel safe enough to tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. That safety doesn't come from removing pressures. It comes from building trust strong enough to hold up under any type of pressure. And that's what we're talking about today. Psychological safety in high-stakes environments and how great leaders create trust even when the margin for error is razor thin. Psychological safety is one of those terms that sounds simple until you realize what it looks like when it's completely missing. It isn't about being nice or avoiding those hard conversations. It's about creating an environment where people can speak, question, or even fail without losing credibility. It's okay to fail. Don't worry, but we're going to fail safely, right? When that safety disappears, you don't notice it through noise or through conflict. You notice it through silence. It shows up in those quiet glances around the room, in the simple hesitations before somebody speaks, or even in the meetings where the same voices dominate while other people look down at the table. Silence is deceptive. It can look like calm and it can sound like alignment, but more often than not, it's the sound of people holding back because they're afraid of how honesty is going to be received. I've seen teams that looked disciplined from the outside in, but they were quietly falling apart inside. People had ideas, but they stopped sharing them. They noticed issues, but they avoided bringing them up. They even started managing the leader's mood instead of managing the mission. That's how psychological safety begins to erode. Rarely in one single moment, but through small hesitations that accumulate until speaking up feels more like a risk that nobody wants to take. And once that silence becomes normal, it's almost impossible to see until something goes completely wrong. In high-stakes environments, that silence it's deadly. It kills innovation, it slows decision-making, and it allows preventable mistakes to grow into enormous crisis. The great irony of all this is that silence often feels like control to the leader. The room seems calm, compliant, and even organized, but under the surface, people are disengaged. They're waiting for direction instead of contributing ideas. A strong leader learns to hear that silence, to look for what isn't being said, because when your people stop giving you truth, they're giving up on trust. Psychological safety doesn't mean removing any form of accountability. It means creating that environment where people can be accountable without fear. They can own mistakes, share feedback, and ask questions without wondering if it's going to cost them any kind of respect. The first step to building that trust is awareness. It's recognizing the difference between quiet confidence and quiet fear. One means that your people trust you, and the other just means that they don't. If this type of message resonates with you, please make sure that you go ahead and like this video and that you're subscribed to this channel, because next week we're going to explore the legacy of leadership. What will you be remembered for? And I promise that one will challenge how you think about success, reputation, and what you leave behind as a leader. Courage doesn't start with the team. It starts with the leader. Psychological safety exists only when people trust how you're going to respond under pressure. They're not listening to your words as closely as they're watching your reactions. Every sigh, every raised eyebrow, every interruption that you make tells them whether honesty is safe. The fastest way to kill honesty is to overreact when somebody brings you bad news. I've learned that people will forgive a leader who makes mistakes, but they rarely forgive a leader who makes them afraid, because once fear enters the room, truth starts to leave it. In any high-stakes environment, how you handle stress becomes the emotional baseline for everybody else in that room. If you're calm, people can think. If you're angry, they're going to shut down. Your tone is what sets that temperature. The very best leaders that I've served with have had a type of steady gravity about them. When problems began to surface, they didn't point fingers or search for blame. They simply asked really good questions, and then they focused on solutions. You could feel the room begin to exhale around them. That's when real problem solving began, because people knew that they were safe to be honest. One moment that stuck with me happened during a particularly stressful period in my career. A Marine had come to me with a mistake that they were sure was going to end their career. I could see the fear in their face, and I told them to walk me through it, start to finish, and they did. And together, we were able to mitigate and patch things up before it ever became a bigger issue. When it was all over, that person stopped by my office and they made a very brief comment that the main reason they felt comfortable coming to me in the first place with this issue was because I had a reputation of staying calm and not blowing up on people. That was the moment that I understood the power of reaction. If my first instinct had been anger or frustration, I never would have heard the truth in time to actually fix it. That one decision to listen instead of explode, it built more trust than any speech ever could. You see, courage in a team doesn't come from motivational slogans. It comes from consistency. When your people know how you're going to respond, they're going to stop managing your emotions and they're going to start managing their own performance. That's how psychological safety begins to grow. Not through policies or through training, but through a leader's daily behavior under pressure. Your people don't need you to be fearless. They need you to be steady. They need to know that honesty won't cost them respect or their job, because courage flows from the top, and the way that you handle fear decides whether they're going to bring you truth or silence. A lot of people place a lot of emphasis and have a lot of stress about making mistakes, but a mistake is rarely what's going to break a team. The real damage comes from how the mistake is handled. In a healthy culture, mistakes are going to turn into lessons, but in a fearful one, they turn into cover-ups. Psychological safety doesn't mean there are no consequences. It means people believe the process will be fair. They know that owning up to a misstep won't erase their credibility, and that being honest about a problem is better than hiding it until it explodes. When fear drives behavior, people stop reporting small errors. They wait and they hope that nobody notices. But problems never stay small for long. You ever experienced that in your career or in your life? The more silence grows, the less control you actually have as a leader. And one of the best teams that I ever worked with, it wasn't perfect, but they were incredibly honest, maybe a little bit too honest. I don't know if that's a thing, but when something went wrong, they brought it up immediately. We didn't waste any time pointing fingers. We simply focused on what could be learned and then what needed to change. The trust that came from that transparency, it made the team faster, smarter, and really more resilient than any system or checklist ever could have. That's the power of psychological safety. It doesn't protect you from mistakes. It protects you from repetition. Leaders sometimes worry that if they make space for mistakes, standards are going to begin to slip. But the complete opposite is true. When people feel safe to own their missteps, they hold themselves to a higher standard because they're invested in the outcome. You can have accountability without fear, but you can never have growth without any trust. Every organization will face moments when something goes wrong. The question is whether your people are going to come to you with the truth or if they're going to stay silent and hope for the very best. That choice is shaped by how you respond today. When you react with understanding and direction instead of frustration and blame, you build that foundation of trust that lasts far beyond the immediate issue. That's how teams learn faster and recover stronger. So when something goes wrong, you have to ask yourself, am I building a culture that actually fixes problems or the one that hides them? And you know when a really great time to start thinking about all of this is? You're right, it's the first 30 days. If you're stepping into a new leadership role or trying to rebuild trust in a team that's maybe gone quiet a little bit, this is exactly why I created the First 30 Days Leadership course. It gives leaders just like you a practical framework for earning respect, creating trust, and setting the tone that keeps your people speaking up and speaking the truth from day one. Because poor leadership, it's not just frustrating, it's incredibly expensive. Miss the mark in your first 30 days and you may spend months or even years trying to recover from it. But get it right and you don't just earn respect, you earn momentum that really lasts. Lead with confidence right from day one. Whether you're taking over a new team or you're stepping into a higher stakes role or even leading for the very first time, this course is your tactical advantage. To see our in-depth course information page, visit the link in the description below. So, as we mentioned earlier, people don't need a fearless leader, but they do need a really steady one. In high stakes environments, fear is going to be completely normal. Uncertainty is going to be constant. The difference between that chaos and control isn't the absence of pressure, it's the presence of your composure. When everything feels urgent, people look to you for cues. They're not just listening to what you say, they're actually watching how you say it. Your tone, your posture, your breathing, they all tell the team whether it's time to panic or if it's time to focus. The truth is that calm is incredibly contagious. When you stay composed, people think more clearly, they listen better, they make smarter decisions. But when leaders lose their footing, that anxiety spreads faster than any order you could ever give. I've worked in environments where pressure wasn't measured in profits or performance metrics. It was measured in real lives. The ones who thrived weren't always the loudest or the most confident. They were the ones who knew how to stay centered when the room started to spin. And spin they did. That composure builds something deeper than any authority. It builds trust because when your people see that you remained clear-headed in the chaos, they start believing that things are manageable and that they can handle what's coming next. Composure doesn't mean being emotionless. It means knowing which emotions to lead with. Anger fuels fear. Calm fuels confidence. And confidence is what keeps people thinking when other people freeze. The challenge is that composure doesn't happen by accident. Really, no good leadership traits happen by accident, if you've come to realize at this point. It's a skill that actually comes from your own self-awareness. It's knowing your triggers, recognizing your own stress signals, and then grounding yourself before they take over. Sometimes the most powerful thing that a leader can do is just pause. That pause gives you the space for you to see the problem, not just feel it. It turns reactions into response. And that's what separates really good leaders from reactive ones. Reactive leaders feed the storm. Great leaders settle it. Psychological safety depends on that steadiness. When you show your team that composure matters more than control, they start mirroring your behavior. They stop hiding mistakes. They start thinking collaboratively, and the entire room becomes more focused. You see, people remember how you made them feel when things go wrong. If your calm gives them clarity, they're going to follow you anywhere. Well, I suppose the real test of leadership here isn't how people act when things go right. It's how they communicate when things go wrong. And they're going to. It's okay. A culture is psychologically safe when people can speak the truth without fear. They can admit mistakes without shame, and they can even disagree without it being disrespectful. That's okay. That type of trust doesn't just happen by luck. It's built by one reaction at a time, in the moments when the leaders choose curiosity over criticism and empathy over ego. In high-stakes environments, fear is always going to exist, but so will the opportunity to lead differently. Every meeting, every feedback session, every decision either adds to safety or takes away from it. If your people don't feel safe to tell you the truth, they're going to start protecting you from it. And when that happens, your visibility is going to shrink while your risk is going to grow. Leaderships who value truth over comfort, they see problems sooner and then they fix them faster. Leaders who silence that truth may look in control, but they're leading completely blind. Psychological safety isn't soft, it's incredibly strategic. It's what allows people to actually innovate under pressure, to speak up before the mistakes multiply, and then to stay engaged even when the workload is incredibly heavy. You can have the most talented team in the entire world, but if they don't feel safe to speak up to you, you're never going to access their full potential. The very best ideas, the early warnings, the creative solutions, all of those live on the side of trust. So go ahead and ask yourself, when the pressure hits, does your team lean in or do they pull back? Do they go quiet or do they get collaborative? The answer to that question tells you everything that you need to know about the culture that you've built. If you want to keep sharpening your leadership and building teams that actually thrive under pressure, go ahead and subscribe to the Diplomat's Dispatch. It's my bi-weekly newsletter where I share real-world lessons, practical leadership habits, and the tools that help you strengthen trust and influence, whether you lead 10 people or even 10,000. The link is below in the description, and it's completely free. Because at the end of the day, psychological safety isn't about comfort. It's about your confidence, the confidence to speak, to act, and then to lead without fear. When people trust you with the truth, you've already succeeded as a leader. All right, real talk for a moment. The measure of leadership isn't found in those easy days. It's revealed in the incredibly hard ones. It's the moments where pressure, uncertainty, and fear all show up at the same time. Psychological safety is what allows teams to face those incredibly difficult moments with trust instead of tension. It's what keeps communication alive, performance steady, and people united when things get really difficult. Because leadership isn't about removing that fear. You're never going to be able to do that. But it is about leading through it with immense clarity, calm, and absolute confidence. Thank you very kindly for watching this episode of The Everyday Diplomat. I'll see you next week when we dive into the legacy of leadership. What will you be remembered for? It's a conversation about impact, integrity, and the mark that every leader leaves behind. Until then, take care of your people, take care of yourself, and remember, every business is a people business. Until next time.